So recently we learned some information about the shell company that Michael Cohen used to pay off porn star Stormy Daniels. Now, Cohen is a fixer, right? That's what he's called. He's the president's fixer. He goes in and he fixes problems. Well, Stormy Daniels was a problem. And so he created this LLC, this company, this is a shell company, to employ as one of his tools to be able to fix that problem. Now, there's more information, though, that has come out about this tool, which shows that it did more than just pay off porn stars. In fact, this company has actually been used as a way to sell access to President Trump. HuffPost explains. This week, it was revealed that the financiers for Cohen's company included major corporations, including Korea Aerospace Industries, the pharmaceutical company Novartis, and AT&T. Now, it also received money from Columbus Nova, a New York investment firm with close ties to a Russian oligarch named Viktor Vekselberg, who has been questioned by special counsel Robert Mueller. So, well, okay, how does this show that that this is being used as a way to get access to the president? Well, look, if you create a shell company and you go to corporations and you tell them, I can give you access to the president if you give me money, if you funnel money through this company, well, that right there is a perfect example of selling access to the president, because that's exactly what happened. Now, this, of course, is disastrous news for Michael Cohen and also for President Trump, because it shows that both of them are engaged in incredibly swampy behavior. Now, they go on to point out the amounts of money that ended up flowing into this shell company from these different corporations, which happen to have business in front of the federal government. Now, they say that Novartis paid $1.2 million for what they called healthcare policy matters. KAI said it needed help on U.S. accounting standards, and Columbus Nova said it paid a consulting fee that had nothing to do with Vekselberg. Now, AT&T, another company, also paid millions of dollars to Essential Consultants LLC, which they explained was routine. So, look, I'm going to go in and I'm going to detail the payment here from AT&T and tell you why they believe it's routine and how it actually is how Washington works, and it is what Donald Trump had been railing against. All right. Now, first, let's go into AT&T basically admitting that why they did this. In a memo to staff on Wednesday, the company explained that it needed to understand how the Trump administration would approach issues like tax reform and antitrust regulations. Oh, see, we're just paying money. For consulting, we're paying Michael Cohen to understand what the Trump administration is going to do. Now, they try to explain this by saying, quote, companies often hire consultants for these purposes, especially at the beginning of a new presidential administration. And we have done so in previous administrations as well. We were just trying to understand what they were going to do. That's all. We just paid them so much money. Well, as you're going to see, that's actually far from the truth. These companies aren't attempting to understand the administration. They're, in a way, essentially bribing it for insider information and access. An official with one of these companies, who requested anonymity to speak openly, said that Cohen was, quote, promising access to Trump and members of the administration, and was positioning himself as basically a lobbyist. So you give me money and I will lobby the president. Now, the president also happens to be my boss. I happen to be his personal lawyer who has been with him for years and years, and to whom I am also a fixer of problems. And if you give that money to me, then maybe he will listen to your concerns. You want to talk about the swamp? This is the swamp. Now, one question I had when I covered this earlier was, how did they find out about Cohen's LLC, right? And it's a good question because there's no public face, there's no website, there's no employees. Basically, it exists, but it actually doesn't. It essentially exists on paper. Well, now we have the answer to that. A Novartis employee told Stat, that's a news outlet that covers health and medicine, that Cohen had actually reached out to them. So was Cohen selling access? Absolutely. And he was going and reaching out to these different companies that had business before the Trump administration and saying, hey, if you give me loads of money, well, then I can help you. I can amplify your message. Now, they said, quote, his promise of access was enticing because the company was trying to find an inroad into the administration. Now, apparently Cohen had appeared to be a disappointment. In a statement, Novartis said it entered into its one-year agreement with Cohen, but in March, it had its first meeting with him. And they said following this initial meeting, Novartis determined that Michael Cohen and Essential Consultants would be unable to provide the services that Novartis had anticipated related to U.S. healthcare policy matters, and the decision was taken not to engage further. So here's a company that said, yes, I tried to buy access to the president through Michael Cohen, but it turns out that it wasn't quite what we expected. I see. Now, this is a swamp, as I mentioned before, and unfortunately, this actually is normal, and that goes to the corruption of the system. Now, according to Eric Gordon, a professor at the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business, talking to Business Insider, he said, quote, 20% of the buildings on K Street are lobbyists selling you access pretty forthrightly. They're not even hiding it. He said, quote, that's what Washington is all about. So that's the swamp. These companies, and you could point to a lot of LLC shell companies, just like what Michael Cohen had operated, and, point out instances where those companies were selling access to politics, to politicians. That's a sick system. This is the swamp. This is, look, and I remember Donald Trump, he's like, well, that's how the swamp is. Guess what? I want to drain the swamp. I want to get rid of the swamp. Now, the swamp is in the White House. It is connected personally with the President of the United States, and of course, he does not care. Now, one of those companies also was AT&T. Now, this is interesting as well. Now, Bloomberg reported that AT&T wanted guidance on how Trump would react to its proposed merger with Time Warner. So what did they do? They ended up paying Essential Consultants over $200,000 for that guidance. Now, it's not actually guidance. They say it's guidance, but not really. In reality, this is basically insider information and access to the president. Now, that's something that a large corporation like AT&T wants, and they want badly, especially given their potential merger with Time Warner, which is expected to make them billions and billions of dollars in profit. But again, this is normal. Former lobbyist Mark Naples, who runs the digital media consulting firm WIT Strategy, he said, quote, what Trump has been referring to as the swamp he was going to drain is what we in D.C. used to call Gucci Gulch. I was a lobbyist for 11 years, and I knew all sorts of guys who had LLCs like Essential Consultants. The thing lobbyists will boast about is getting you access to sell your side of the story. And so, in our politics, that is normal. And to a corporation, selling this kind of access to an administration is invaluable. And unfortunately, it is also legal. Mimi Rocha, a former federal prosecutor in New York, told Bloomberg, quote, the law is very narrow in what constitutes a bribe. You can pay money to get access to politics and curry favor. You just can't pay money to get an official action. So bribery laws, of course, are very, very tight. It's defined very, very narrowly. So it has to be quid pro quo. But in reality, it doesn't work like that. You can influence a politician. I know they call money in politics, well, that's to speech. He's just talking to this administration official, this lobbyist, when in reality, of course the money influences your decisions. And if you get a lot of money, and look, maybe you were already going to vote that way to begin with, but the money sure helps. The money doesn't make you vote against something. Oh, maybe it does in other circumstances, in other situations. The point is that money in politics is the root of corruption. And no administration is more corrupt than the Trump administration. Now, that's not to say that old administrations are not corrupt. I'm sure we also had corruption within the Obama administration. It is the system that is broken. And the person that came in to try to, who campaigned on attempting to break the system, ends up continuing that system. So that is what we call a bait and switch. Oh no, don't worry, I'm going to drain the swamp. Suckers. You guys are suckers. We're going to continue this system. And in fact, we're going to be even more corrupt. We're going to sell more access. That is the corruption. Look, and the reason that the bribery is so narrow in scope of what constitutes bribery is because the people that are getting bribed through campaign contributions and independent expenditures, well, they get to make the rules and they get to limit what kind of bribery is legal and what is not legal. And that's how you get a system where those independent expenditures, campaign contributions, and payouts to shell companies are not only normal, but incredibly legal. Now, the only reason that everybody's so up in arms about this now is because it's open. And people are in a mood where they despise the swamp. They despise the establishment. They despise the corruption. So now that people are turned on to what actually happens in Washington, how it actually works, we're angry. And so, well, now, oh, we got to distance ourselves from this corruption. We got to drain the swamp. When in reality, the swamp is just as swampy, if not more, than it has ever been. It is, once again, business as usual. And business in the Trump administration, as you can see, is booming. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.